Hello, and welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within us. I'm Maria Luz, your host, an astrologer, psychic medium, and certified hypnotist. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into medical astrology. This is going to be a multi part series, and as it is the holiday season, I'm trying to give myself a little time to enjoy the the darkest days before we lead to the solstice. And I want to really make that time of year special and intentional. So these episodes will be a little bit shorter. And along those lines, I mentioned last week, if you are looking for a gift for someone else or for yourself, I do have different offerings, and I will put the link in the show notes along with a coupon code for you. When I told my friends that I was going to do a series on medical astrology, the reactions were super excited from, I've never heard of that, or I'm not much of a podcast person, but I would totally listen to those episodes. Yet, medical astrology is not new. From as early as 400 BCE, Babylonian and Assyrian artifacts show evidence of using knowledge of celestial bodies for human bodies. And Hippocrates, after which the oath taken by Western physicians is named, used astrology in his practice and teaching. And the names I heard in science classes when I was learning the origins of modern medicine and pharmaceuticals, such as Galen, Culpeper, and Paracelsus, were all knowledgeable in astrology and its connection to the body. In medieval times, physicians were even required to pass a test up until about the 16th century to show that they were fluent in astrology, and it is thought that the abbreviation RX comes from radix, which was a term for the natal chart. So the physician writing RX was indicative that they stood by the treatment given to that patient because they had seen that the patient's natal chart provided a sound basis for the treatment. There are numerous words and symbols which persist to intertwine astrology and disease. Think of Mercury, which was known as Hermes to the Greeks, and the caduceus. Menses and lunacy are from Moon. Vein and venereal are from Venus. And the symbols for male and female, which remain in medical textbooks, are from the glyphs of Mars and Venus. I recall reading a little about medical astrology in the very first astrology class that I took. And I know I've mentioned this before, but we used this excellent book called Astrology for Yourself by Douglas Bloch and Demetra George, who is one of my all-time favorites. And in that book, they cite three important ways that today's holistically minded physician could utilize astrological knowledge. And I would say not just holistically minded physicians, but all of us. So the first one is to know that physical illness doesn't randomly occur. It's correlated to the weak spots in our chart, either natally in the birth chart or by transit, by a planet, hitting those spots. And the individual, if they maintain their health, may never experience the consequences of the inherent vulnerability of these weak spots. But in times of internal or external stress, those weaknesses often manifest. The second one is it's fairly universally accepted that mental and physical health are linked. And while they didn't put this in the book, I see, this evidence mounting regarding this two-way communication between the gut microbiome and brain signaling. And the fact that we have associated Mars with aggression and Saturn with depression for thousands of years is no accident. And we see those energies influencing individuals differently, depending on the signs those planets are in and where they're placed in the natal chart or how they transit. And the third is knowledge of the historical or even the potential impact of transits of certain planets on key areas of the natal chart, or simply seeing the data of increased emergency room visits when there's a full moon can inform the selection of dates for procedures. And one can retrospectively attribute events quite tidily to astrology. And as Block and George gave an example of this from the former President Richard Nixon and his health issues, which were exacerbated by the stress of the Watergate scandal. And I also put a link into this old article from the New York Times that was flagging some of these health issues because I thought that was interesting. And the description in the book Astrology for Yourself, it's very involved and detailed. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to buy that book. Just not for this alone, but there's so many useful tips and information in there. It's just very thorough. But here are the physical infirmities and the astrological associations that they point to on this topic of Richard Nixon and what was happening to him around this time of Watergate. So the first one is knees, and Capricorn rules the knees, and his sun, Mercury, and Jupiter are all in this sign. The second, lungs and pneumonia. So Mars, which rules inflammation, is conjunct Mercury, which rules respiration, and opposes Pluto, which is tissue destruction. And Pluto is in the sign of Gemini, which is the lungs. So those are present in his natal chart. A third one is circulation. And he has the moon, which is the distributor of life force in Aquarius, which rules circulation. And these are in a square to Saturn, which, as we know, is about restriction. So all of those latent weaknesses were activated when Saturn transited and made some key aspects to especially his sun. And in September 1974, he experienced a blood clot, which originated, of course, in his knees and moved to his lungs. So, already involving all three of those weak spots, and that nearly killed him. So, at the time I encountered this case study on Nixon, I was still in my position as an executive director at a pharma company, and I wasn't quite ready to work on entirely dismantling the conditioning that included categorizing astrology as an esoteric and a somewhat silly practice. And while I had learned enough by that point that I couldn't deny the correlation of my astrological makeup to what was present in my life, it was a bridge too far to credit astrology with the breadth of wisdom and application that I now understand it to have. So, a couple years later, I became acquainted more deeply with medical astrology through my training in herbalism. I took 12 elective credits on this subject from Judith Hill, who founded the Academy for Astrological Medicine, and Matthew Wood, for whom the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, where I study, is named. And they have written and illustrated many of them because they're both like Leonardo da Vinci polymaths, 27 books between the two of them, almost an equal number, each of them. Um, and in case you didn't catch this, my undergraduate degree was in biochemistry. And the scientific rationale that plants make a more efficacious and less harmful medicine than meds that are manufactured to serve a marketable purpose just made sense to me early on in my studies, even when I was still, in this very left brain way of thinking. Um, and with as with astrology, I was drawn to herbalism as a means of enhancing both self-empowerment as well as the connection to more than self. That's really the territory that I am drawn to explore at this time of my life. And that both of these methodologies are by their nature aimed at improving harmony among life on Earth just makes sense to me and falls in this focus for me. And of course, animals, inclusive of humans, were using the medicine of plants to survive and thrive over millennia. And it follows that other observations of nature, such as the moon cycles and the other celestial bodies, would be woven into the collective wisdom. As I am striving towards a higher sense of well being this holiday season, as I mentioned, these installments are going to be a bit shorter. So today I'm going to leave you with some homework to do in your extra time. So if you find yourself interested in this topic, it will make the subsequent installments more interesting to you if you do this homework because they'll be more personal. So here it is. Um, it's really just two things. One is list out your maladies and be specific to the body part and or body system. So, for example, for me, I have arthritis in my right knee. Um, and I have circulation problems with my hands, but it could be, other things for you. Um, maybe you're accident prone to cutting yourself when you're cooking or something like that. So yeah, it could be anything. Just list those out. And then secondly, just list out the signs that each of these planets are in your birth chart. And you can find that on any of those free places like AstroSeek, or if you use an app, you can like CoStar or the Chani app, or Time Passages, you could find it there as well. So the planets you would want to know the signs are the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And that is it for today. If you'd like to support me, I put ways that you can do that in the show notes, including checking out my Substack, where I put these companion written pieces for my podcast, as well as other writing that might be useful to you, and some tools that are free. And I hope all of this empowers you to be consciously curious about medical astrology. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much and enjoy your day. Bye bye.